Thanks, Senator Bingaman. Senator Coates.
Thank you. I want to just pursue that question a little bit because this was on my mind also. My experience is that the political system and the political animal finds it awfully difficult to say no to constituents with re-election in mind, or just the natural human tendency to want to please people rather than not disappoint them. I had the privilege of having dinner with Christine Lagarde, head of the IMF, and I asked her the question about the reforms that, we were talking about the reforms that were taking place in Europe. I asked her the question, I said, would any of these reforms be taking place without Europe being in a fiscal crisis mode? Her answer was, absolutely not. She said, unless the revolver is at the temple of the politician with a finger on the trigger, they are not capable of summoning the collective will to take the necessary steps to tell the people that they represent that they have to take some steps to resolve the problem, and it will cause some disappointment and some pain in order to do so. And my experience in the years that I've had involved in politics is exactly that. We never would have gotten the BCA, whether you think that was enough or not enough, in August of 2011, in my opinion, without the threat of defaulting on our debt. And to think that we could put a structure in place today that perhaps we would all be comfortable with in terms of solving our long-term problem, and be assured that 10 years from now, the Congress would not have modified that dozens of times to the response of constituents who are banging on the door saying, you know, this is too much pain. We can't sustain this in the long run. We can hardly sustain a policy for months around here, let alone 10 years. And so if we really want to fix our long-term situation, has been described, that I think there's a consensus that without that long-term fix and a credible fix, we can't get from here to there relative to where we want our debt to GDP ratio to be to provide that kind of growth and what we want to hand off to future generations. We have to factor in a big factor of the political system here and the way politicians think and react and the history of that. And we need leverages in order to address that. I'm really not asking for a response because you have already responded to that and I think stated your positions. I just wanted to add my 2 cents worth in terms of why I think it's so important that we have those leverage points. Now, maybe there's other ways of doing this. But my experience is Congress can, the next Congress or even the current Congress can undo that in a pretty big hurry as the constituents line up outside our doors. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Can I just, in response, because you make some good points. I'd say, though, it's a mistake to put your revolver to your head on a regular basis. In the case of Europe, this is hopefully a once-in-5-generation event that we're going through now, and they nail this thing down. We just don't want to do this on a regular basis, and that's what we're setting ourselves up for with the current law, and that's going to be a problem for our economy. Business people aren't going to engage unless they have clarity with respect to this thing. The other thing I'd say is I have more faith than you apparently than you have in this institution. You do, at the end of the day, you do the right thing. If you look at the history of this body, it ultimately comes up with roughly the right answer, and we haven't done it with the debt ceiling since the beginning of our country. So I think we're very capable of doing it, and we can do it without this kind of anachronistic law.
Well, I would just respond by saying we've been talking about dealing with our cascading debt and deficit for decades. And I would say we've been far short of doing the right thing that has put us in a position to look for a healthy fiscal future.
Thank you, Senator Coates. Senator Klobuchar.